Hey everybody, this is the Rebricker. Welcome to the building of the invisible lift. Now before we get started, just for those of you who don't know, you can follow me on Google+, click right there. And also these projects, these machines that we've been building, the ball factory, if you haven't seen it, check it out. The invisible lift that we're going to build today, those were originally designed by Akiyuki, and I want to make sure this is very clear. This is a request that he specifically made when I requested permission to do these videos and to build these, is that if anybody out there is building it, if you're going to be putting it on display, he would like to be credited as the original designer. So what I do when I'm out and I put a project on display, I have a little sign I made up, essentially says that, you know, I built this, but this design is originally by Akiyuki. He is the designer. I don't ever want to lose the privilege of being able to build these machines, and I want to be able to continue to share them with you. So if you can pay him that small courtesy, make sure to give him credit as the designer. And honestly, if anyone tries to take credit for these machines, anybody who knows anything about the Lego world knows that these are Akiyuki's machines. He's an incredible builder, and we want to make sure that he keeps building because the stuff he builds is genius. So, simple piece of paper, that's it. And we can keep building. Let's get onto the machine. We've got the different modules all built, it's parted out. There's a lot here. So if you've been keeping up, I figured it'd be best to do the final assembly as a video, just so you can see how each part integrates with the other. Interestingly enough, this is our first part. It's the lift mechanism. And based on this mechanism is where we're going to start. So the end with this is the hopper end, the end with the gear is the drive end. And together, so this is the drive end, this is the hopper end, and I'm just going to take this guy and put him onto the hopper end. But we'll just lock that into place like that, and then we'll grab the next one. So if you watch here, that gear slides right in and it lines up, and we'll just drop that into place. So let's see here if I can, because as we go we can power it up and see what it's going to do. So much like the ball factory, actually this is only designed to run in one direction, although at this point in the machine it doesn't matter, but we're going to be switching the switch the same way as the ball factory. Oh look, our gear flies off. Okay, let's just hold that in place. So nothing's happening. Let's get everything slid into place. That has to be in place, so a little bit of pressure there. Obviously works best when put together. There we go. You can see how that's going to work. So, moving on to the next section will be our cams. Keep sliding this down so you can see what's going on. And with our cams, it's going to be in this direction. And these guys are going to sit like that. Now you'll know you've got it lined up right when it sits properly on the frame, and this axle with the gear fits into this arm. Just like that. So now if we switch it on, everything sits a little tighter. And you'll see as we go, things are going to get better. Next up is our first tower. So many pieces to move around. I've got our hopper there. Next up's our first tower. The first tower, you're going to recognize this one's different from the other one because of the angled beams. And those angled beams are going to go towards the motor. And our gears are going to go towards the motor. And before we do that, we had one leftover axle connector. And that axle connector is right here. And that's what our main drive axle is going to connect to. And these two subsequent axles are going to connect to these guys. So on this guy, when we rotate them, one side is up and the other side is exactly down. So that's correct. Now, when we're attaching this to the cams, because these cams are driven by these gears also, we want to make sure that when this guy on this side is all the way up, that this guy is right here at a right angle. And then, if that's the case, then the other guy on the other side is exact opposite. So it'll be there. So let's get this put together. We've got this guy straight up. We get this guy at a right angle. There we go. The middle one we'll just put into place because that's standard gear operation. And this guy is at the exact opposite of the other one. So this one's up, this one's down. Press it together and lock it in. That should be the timing for this. There may be a little bit of fine tuning that we have to do, but overall that should work. One side's down, one side's up. We're locked in. Our gear's in place. Our cams are just sitting down, but they're not lifting the machine up or anything like that. So that should be good. And let's grab the next piece. The next piece, well, if you want, let's see if it runs. You'll find that the lift mechanisms, so this guy and this guy here, they get jammed up in there when they're not actually attached to anything, so that's why we have it jamming. Also, we have these slip clutches in here to keep the whole thing from blowing itself to pieces. So let's move along and we'll get the ball lift into place. I'll get this set up hopefully in exactly the right spot. And to do that, we're going to go back to the front of the machine and we're going to look at this guy here. Let's see if I can get it straight on the camera, it might help. So we actually want this one, if that's straight perpendicular, we want it just a little bit back, and also so this guy's popping up just a tiny bit above the Technic brick. And with it in that position, we can come back over here. We'll bring in our center lift. And the center lift is going to be at the lowest possible point. So if we give it a rotate, see it goes up and down. We want it at the lowest possible point. And we'll turn that in place. And we'll drop it right in. Now the gear turns as we drop it in because it's resting against the other gear. So just make sure you pre-turn it a little bit so when it drops in, it's at the right angle. We drop that in and we push this axle in. It'll go in one Technic beam worth, and that's pressed into place right there. So we can see if we turn the main drive gear a little bit, everything drives, it's actuating, it's functioning. So let's adjust this. A good reference point that I'm going to keep going back to is this guy. So it's when looking at the front of the machine, if this is the ball hopper here, give this a turn, and this cam, we're going to have it vertical. So like that. Now I'll give this whole thing a rotate so you can see. We'll set that to vertical. And then that way, we'll have a reference point that we're going to keep coming back to for configuring the timing. So we have that one in place, and now we're going to move on to the next tower. So grabbing the next tower, the long axle extension on one side, and we're going to get this put in place. Let me just rotate again so you can see this. Very important that you're able to see what we're doing. So the long axle extension that we've got sticking into the frame here is going to attach to that beam. Or not beam, that axle that's sticking out. There we go. Now, before we attach that, we got to set the timing. Now, if you had a look, there's no gear here to set the timing on either of these. Oh, we have no timing to set. This is going to be easy. So, we line up that axle, we slide it into place, and that just drops right on. So these are still freewheeling. The main drive gear just comes up the center but doesn't actually attach. And we'll get that going and in place. But you can see the frame of this is taking shape, and a lot of the busy work was done early on when we built each component. Let me move that hopper out of the way so it's not confusing anybody. There we go. So we have our lift, main drive, first tower, center lift, second tower, and then we're going to be dropping in the final cams that drive the rest of it, and we're going to be doing a lot of time and configuration in the next little bit here. Alright, we got our cam assembly here. This can be tricky to set up the timing. As you saw from the build itself, the center gear is attached to only 2 of these cams, one on each side of it, and the outside gears are only attached to the absolute outside cam for setting up the timing. Now, if you look, the way I've got the outside gears set, they don't make the cam a full semicircle. It's actually 2 gear teeth on the 40-tooth gear smaller. So based on the center one, top dead center, and the one on the other side is exactly opposite of it. So, oh, sorry, I grabbed the right one. Top dead center, and the exact opposite is down in there. And what we're going to end up doing is, this guy is straight up. This guy is off, and each of these are off by about 2 gear teeth to make it a slightly smaller semicircle. So we'll stand this one top dead center. The cam that we set up on our machine at the far end of the drive end that I pointed out just a moment ago also is at top dead center. And the goal here is to get this to marry up with that axle extension that's just in here. So as close to top dead center on both of those as absolutely possible. We got this bushing in here that we've got to get between these gears, which will be a little bit tricky, but not impossible. Just be very careful and work it in there. Slide that axle into place and press everything down. So, top at the other end, this guy here, they're both in the top position, top center, opposite of each other, but they're both facing up. And then from there we slide this bushing in, and sometimes for some of these tight little corners you can use an axle just to help work stuff into place. There we go. Slide that in, and now let's set up the timing on these. So we'll start with this one because it's at the front. I'll lift it, well, if we look, because we have everything adjusted at the front, the one in the back over on this side, over here, is at the lowest point. And because this works in opposing sides to each other with the antennas when it's lifting the balls, if this one's at the bottom, we want this one at the bottom. So we'll put that one at the absolute bottom, which means the one in the back on this side, so on this gear, needs to be at the absolute top. So we'll put this one at its perfect bottom, this one at the absolute top, and we'll carefully finagle that 8-tooth gear back into place. There we go. So we just have a visual verification in here that this one is at the absolute bottom, this one in the back is at the absolute top, which matches opposing corners of the other drive assembly. This should set up the timing. This should work for us with everything that we are requiring. That has most of our drive parts and components in. Let's give this a spin and we'll come back to the hopper side of the machine. We'll start mounting more of our parts that need to go in place. And this is where the machine now will take shape. So that's in place. We'll grab our hopper. There's our hopper. Well, the frame of it. And when we put this in place, what I want to do is what we're looking at is underneath we have the beam, and we want to be right in the middle one, right in the middle hole with this pin. So if I get that pin lined up, and pressed into place, there we go. That just drops in. Make sure our plates and everything are in place. You'll see that that's going to help solidify the lift here. So let's see if I can lift this up very carefully, because we still don't have the structural strength in place. You can see inside where that pin lines up right in the center. So from there we can take our centerpiece for our lift mechanism, and we want the slopes all going towards the machine, and that just drops into place. So we drop that in, press that down, and now we have our ball lift mechanism. I ran through step by step for how to build the rest of the frame for the hopper. I'm just going to put the pieces in here just in case you missed out. So those, which I wish were black. There's a lot of stuff in here that's supposed to be black. While shooting it, it came across that black on black is really hard to see in pictures. So it's good I don't have all the right colors. And then just the frame that goes around here. Press this all on and into place carefully but thoroughly, holding underneath so I don't press anything out of place. There we go. There's our hopper. Just like that, we've got our hopper in place. There is a whole slew of beams that go all the way down the entire length of the machine. So let's get these in place. Pretty sure I spelled out exactly how they go together as I assembled it, but let's go through this. We got this guy here, and he's got that extra holder to him. He goes on next on this side, and this pin slides into place. That holds the strength of our drive unit there. Let me rotate this around. Next up is a shorter Technic beam and the pins. And you'll notice, because we pre-built these earlier, if you were following all the photos step by step, the pins line up with the pins below. That's how you're going to know you've got the right ones. So in this case, that's not the right one. Give me this guy here. So another beam lines up with the pins below. And this one, because it's an end piece, ends up on the corner. We'll use that. So put that in place. Everything lines up. We get to the end. On the end, it's just a large 1x14 or 1x12 brick, which I didn't have in black. And we're onto this side with the cam. Again, corner piece, got that extra support. Make sure you lift that out of the way just so you're not pinning it underneath, and we'll press that brick into place. And again, lining all of this up. We've got pins all the way along that line up. This isn't jammed into place anywhere. And then we got the short one that goes in the middle. Pins lining up. And our last one, which fits into place. Now you know you've got it right when all your pins line up. If you got it wrong, just move the pins. The only thing that's a real issue is the short one in the center. Alright, let's move on. Okay, we built an assortment of small bits that still need to go on here, and now that we have the top rail of the machine on, we can mount all of these. So to get this started, grab this guy and that's just going to go on these pins that are already in place and lock into the top of the lift on this side, just like that. And we've got another one. Notice it's the opposite, and we'll just mount that on these pins on this side. Nice and easy. From there, we have 3 beam with a black pin on each side. That's going to mount right there beside the blue pin. And we have a 5x3 L beam, and the 2 pins here, they fit in right in here. So you've got 2 pins, comes in right above this. Oh, that goes in, the 1 pin sticking out. This is going to be for that ball chute for it to go through. Coming down further on this side of the machine, we've got this guy. Now this was something I had to add because I had an axle that kept creeping out on this gear in the drive assembly. So all I've done is this is so we can drop that down and it'll hold the gear into place. So we'll just drop that way down so we can feed it through underneath and grab it. Line that up and push the pins in. So if you're counting holes, you got these 2 pins, you got 1, 2 empty holes, and then 1, 2 filled holes. And we rotate this, you can see it rotating up in the frame there. We'll rotate it just so it blocks that axle so it doesn't creep out. Alright, and we got 3 parts left. And these 3 parts are to hold the backboard that's going to be behind the lift, so the balls will roll over to the chute. Now, the angle of these guys, let's see if we can actually see it in frame. There we go. So we'll start with this beam. This is the beam with the 2 pins at one end and the 1 pin at the other end. And that's going to go in the first available holes at this end. So it's actually second from the end. On the, in my model, it's the light gray and the dark gray beam. And then we've got this, which is the small structure. It bends, so that'll line up. And the blue pin coming out here goes into the 1 hole next to the black pins. So just like that, lines up, and then that will lean in. And so this last one is just like this, 7 stud beam. And in here, so the part that this pin is on that holds the motor in place, it has a 3 axle at one end. It comes out right next to that. So it's the first available hole, really, there. It's 5th from the end, and that goes in so that it lines up next to this guy when he tips over. And that's going to hold our back piece in place. So that's looking fairly complete for the base. So what we're going to do next is we are going to tile it to make it look nice. So we have all of these tiles. Let's see if we can run through it real quick and make it look good. I got a couple of dark gray ones which I'll throw on the end just to keep them out of the way. So I'm going to go with an 8. I'm trying to remember how this goes now. Let's throw these 2 8s on the end. So 8 and 8, because I remember how this end goes. It's the same on both sides, so just mirror it on both sides if you can't see the back as I do this. It's a 1x2 just to finish off that corner. And then we start short, so we go with a 1x4 and do the front and the back. And then we do a 1x6, and in the back a 1x6. Then we go with an 8. You'll notice the 8 bridges that gap of that beam, 4 on each side. So an 8, and we'll do an 8 again on both sides. and we'll do an 8 again on both sides. And then here, it's not sliding so well, it's getting heavy. You'll notice that this project is heavy. Next we'll do 4s, 1 and 1 on the other side. And we'll go 8 and 8, which again bridges that gap. All of these parts help make this a solid machine. 8 and 8. And in here it's 6 and 6. And what I didn't do was when I started at the other end, I didn't get this 8 on the back side of the machine here. So there we go. We got tiles all along the top rim, all the way around the machine. So with that done, let's secure this structure and make it solid. We've got 28 9 length beams, and they go into all of these sets of pins. And this goes all the way around the machine for strength. This will keep all of these towers from coming apart, all of these Technic beams from coming off. And this will be done at high speed. And there we go. That is the base of the ball factory, right from the cam all the way across the front, the right tower, the left tower, all the way to the hopper. I'd turn it on and run it, but again, these lift sections would probably just jam, so it won't give you a real representation of how it runs. Instead, let's keep going and let's get the rest of this thing built up so we can turn the whole thing on and make it run. Here we go. Alright, let's start to see what this is going to look like built up. So we've got our top of our tower which we built, and we've got these 4 brackets, 3 of which are the same. One is different by the fact that it's only got 2 pins on this end, whereas the rest of them have 4 on this end. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to pick up the top. You'll notice we have a similar angled beam here, which matches the angled beam at this end, which is the left tower, which is the one closest to the ball hopper. And this is going to stand on top. So before we put that on, let's take this guy, which is the different one. We'll put him on first so you don't lose him. The 2 lonely pins go on the top. It goes on the left side of the right tower, just like that. So our 2 lonely pins are here. Then it's inconsequential for the other ones. Let's put black ones on the front. My colors, I would like them to be all matching. It should have been all light gray. So we'll just do that. We'll put 2 on for now. The reason why we're only doing 2 is then we can actually attach the tower without having to finagle too much stuff into place. So that's got our tower attached. Now we'll put on the ones that go on the back, fit them into place. There we go, and this is going to make this tower solid. And the one that goes in the back here, make sure all of those T-beams are nice and solid, nothing's out of place, and there we have it. So that's got those in place. I'm trying to see what we've got next. All right, let's get the main structure of the towers, the moving parts, put on, because this gets tricky. Now, the way these go together and how you know which one's which, we'll start with just the 2 basic ones. We'll do these ones first because they should be simpler. So we're going to need 8 7-stud axles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just 8 per side per tower, and that's how we're going to be holding these on. So you'll notice that these come in pairs. 1, 2, 1, 2. That 7 stud axle is going to fit in between, and that's what these sides are going to ride on. So we're just going to get them staged. We'll put them in, and then we'll push them down into place once we're ready. So we got 2 on top, 2 on the bottom. So it's 4 for one side, and then it'll be 4 for the other side. Now, which one is which? If you hold it up, you want the pins to be facing out, and the connectors, the pin connectors, to be towards the middle of the machine. And you want to make sure all the pins are out, and that these guides that are going to be riding on the axles are to the back of the machine. So we'll get that in place, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually open up the bottom a little bit, so we'll spread it apart, and we're going to mount it on the pins on the base. And so on the right side, that one goes right at the bottom, so we'll get that one put on. Get in there, there we go. And the left side to those 2 blue pins on holes 2 and 3 coming up off of that. So that's got that in place. Just rotate that, and we'll slide the pin through and into the other side. And we'll do that for the remaining 3. 1, so that's our second one there. Make sure it's nice and straight, nothing's pinching. And then we'll do the bottom part. That lines up into there. And then we'll do this side. And it can be tricky. If you've got bigger fingers, this can be tough. So take your time, get creative, use whatever you need to use to get it done. And there we go. That's in place, and it's solid. I got to admit, Akiyuki did a great job in this design, this structure. Let's get the back piece on now. So we'll stage our 4 beam, or our 4 axles. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And with our pins sticking out the front, the connectors towards the center of the machine, we'll split this just a little so that we can get it onto the pins of the actual actuator that's going to raise and lower this. So black pin at the very bottom, the 2 blues in holes 2 and 3 on this side. I apologize for covering up the angle there for you to see. Let's see if I can get that in view. So yeah, the pins are in holes 2 and 3, and we just back this into place, and we start pressing the axles through to the other side connector. And same on this side. Axle goes down and through and into the holes on the other side, so it's nice and even. We'll catch the top 2, and then these are in place. 1 and 2. Ta-da! So, not going to move because everything's geared, everything's locked. Otherwise, we are set. Okay, so that's those 2. Let's bring this back around. And we'll do the back 2. Now the back 2, these guys are crazy. All kinds of goodness. This one we'll put on first just because of the complexity of them, and then this one will be easier to drop into place. So this guy goes on what we've been calling the back of the machine. We give this a rotation. Bring this guy in. So again, to get this done, we're going to take 4 7 stud axles, and we'll get them into place. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll spread the base of this just a little bit We don't want it to come undone. It's just enough so we can get it onto the pins. Oh, this guy dropped. There we go. So on this side we've got 3 pins, and on this side we've got 1 pin and the pin with the hole in the center, because we're going to be actually attaching something down there when we get the drive assembly and everything put on. So let's get this on. And again, lowest pin goes to the lowest hole, and the other side just like that. Now, what's interesting about what I just did is I mounted it backwards. I did that to show you guys what not to do. Yes, no. It happens. This stuff's complicated. So essentially a big bunch of undo, 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 undo. Back to where we started. Make sure that the actual grabber is going to go inside the machine. And for this to be easier, what you could do is pull this pin out of the top, because this pin is going to go through the top of the machine. It's just easier to get it all in this way. So let's try this again. Give it a spread. Pins are in place. Anything that may have come undone while doing this, get it put back in. There we go. That lever goes through the machine. And you'll see, it fits. We are just absolute top end on this side, if you've kept your adjustment the same. And we'll just push our pins down. And this one here, I've got to actually pull it into place. Again, this falls under do what you got to do to get these pins in place, or the axles. This one also, make sure it's through the holder and into the other end. There we go. And then we've got the bottom ones. So, there we go, and the last one, right there. And this pin that we pulled out, I'm going to be able to get this in frame. So this pin we pulled out, it just drops in through the top and into the pin connector that lines up. And this is getting tall. If you're anything like me, you'll have knocked out this antenna about 85 times so far in this project. It happens. Probably should have been the last pieces I put on. At this point, the machine should work. Let's see what happens. Something's jamming. And what could it be? Oh. So, let's put the front on. What's jamming is this lift mechanism on this side. So let's see if we can back it out a bit so we can untrap it. There we go. And we'll grab our last 4 7-stud axles. There we go. We'll stage them. 1. Now, this is going to get tricky because we have this lever here. I might have to take this one from the bottom. 2. Yes, it's not lined up and they interfere with each other, but let's go this way. 3 and 4. And we will make sure that these are to the correct side because they just spin back and forth. And the yellow handle is going to get triggered, or sorry, faces this way because it's what triggers the mechanism at the top here, which is sadly out of frame. There we go, the mechanism at the top. So we will spread this open a little bit and start getting these pins lined up. There we go, and there we go. This is by far one of the coolest machines for a single structure build. So we'll start with this one, we'll go down, make sure we catch our connector there, and into the end, there's one. We'll go down, in, make sure that lines up. That's two. Let's go up with this one, just so that we get it out of the way and done. There's three. And our last one, which we are coming down from the top, in, and come on. In, there we go. Those are all in place. So, with all of that in place, we'll just hook up the battery pack. And we'll fire it up. There we go. Running like a charm. All right, let's get this put into place. This is our, goes on the end of the ball hopper. You'll notice there's slightly offset Technic bricks. These first two holes are used, and I believe it's the second last one, but it'll line up. You get it into the first two holes on the arms that we have here. Just gotta pull them back a little bit and gently. One and two. And it actually lines up to the third hole on this end. So third from the end and the end two on this end. And that gets us a nice angle on here so that the balls don't get trapped. From there, we'll go to the center of the machine, right here for the center lift. And we'll grab this component that we built. And this is actually the entrance ramp for the balls and the little catcher area so that they line up with the lift. So we'll get that into place. And again, this is one of those things that it just lines up. So we'll just slide that box over a little bit as we line up those pins. They fall into place. Arch it up just a little bit so we can get these pins in, and they go into place. We've got our center here, which is perfect, exactly as we wanted. And then the next part we'll grab is the ball indexer. So this just lets one ball at a time go by. I'm naming these things on the fly, so to get this into place, we actually have to pop this off the end, because right here we have a part that comes up. Let's see if I can get that better in frame right here. And this axle will be going through there. I'll just pull it off. We'll feed it through. And it goes back into that connector. And this just goes right back on the end. And then where this mounts, everything lines up. And these two pins, the blue pin and the black pin at the bottom, line up, slides into place. And there's our ball indexer. And that's going to rest on some of the components that travel on this tower to index one ball at a time through the system. All right, let's get the front side going for these pins. Now, each of these consists of two parts. The part with the actual antenna on it, and then the spring unit that allows it to drive. For this to work properly, first thing we want to put on is the spring unit. So let's start at the top. We have a pin, an axle, which lines up into the connector hole, and two pins, which press into that T-beam. So we'll just run all the way down getting these put on. Make sure you get both pins, because that's our structure for this section. They do try to rotate out of the way sometimes, so just be very careful. There we go. There's three. So there's going to be 6 per side, and obviously the ones in the front are opposite the ones on the back. Okay, those ones are the worst. What I'm going to do is just take this T-bracket, just work with that, just to limit the amount of things that are giving me trouble here. Come on. There's the top one, there's the bottom one. Okay, that's in. Let's put the rest of this on now. Those ones are terrible. And I'm sure someone out there is going to find an easier way to do this, and they'll let me know. The joy of YouTube, everyone lets you know. Okay, let's do this bottom one. Hopefully it doesn't give me nearly as much trouble. Just barely get my finger in behind there to hold it in place as I feed it on. And for those of you who are going to say, hey, it'd be easier to build this before mounting it to the tower, yes, I agree. There we go. And the bottom one. And because it's not like those two middle ones that we just did, these bottom ones are actually far easier. So, we got those on. Now let's put on these full connectors. To get these on, yes, we built them, I believe in my instructions actually, you're probably looking at these going, hey, wait, what's that? I think I built them like this. So there's two parts. There was this. Let's get it in front of the white of the tablecloth here. And then there was 12 of these that you built. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pop the end off with the pin, and we're going to feed this through. You'll see there's so much stuff in this center tower that you'll feed it through and it will just, there's only certain spots that it can actually go. So put that in right flush, and then the two connectors will attach to the pins, and then this pinhole to the pin. Awesome. All right, there's always something going on. So we'll slide the axles in and press that into place. Now, this is very crucial. Once you get it in place, check it. It should move smoothly. If it doesn't, and it doesn't come back quickly, if it's slow on the retraction, that will cause trouble because it's not going to be there to catch the ball as soon as it needs to be there. But that one's looking good. So I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to get the rest of these put into place through the awesomeness of time lapse. Look at that, we got one that's not sliding back. Usually this happens when something is out of alignment. And that's a bad thing, because if it gets pulled back, the ball goes up, it's not going to come forward and grab the ball. So it's usually best to pull it off and see if you can see what's gone wrong. Sometimes it's a part that's not straight. One axle's pressed in further than the other. Could be any number of things. Could also be pinching on something else that's inside. But no, that all looks good. Let's pull this out. Let's try again. Feed it in. Pretty smooth. Seems tight on something in there. There's no reason for it to be. Okay, for some reason this cross block seems to have fit tighter. And there's no reason why. I've never seen that happen. The tolerances of Lego pieces are so minute. But whatever. Change stuff around, give it a try. There we go. And that's just running beautifully. Now if we run the machine, these won't move because we don't have the actuator arm in there. And maybe now's a good time to put that in. That'll be the two arms that we built for driving this. Now these ones go on the back of the machine, we want the ones that go on the front. And these are the ones with the arms already on them. So the one with the black single connector goes to the back of the machine, and the one with the double, with the pin in the lower one, goes to the front. So we'll start by putting the one in the back because we have the center piece attached to it, which is going to fit center on here. So we've got our pins already in place. Essentially, this only seems to line up one way. Press these all into place. Whoops. Again, knocking off that antenna. There we go. And in retrospect, I'm beginning to realize that it probably would have been a lot easier to put this on before all of these. Well, let's see if it can be done. You'll see they all pop off their pins. It does move out enough. It can be done. If you're watching this through before building it, which I know some people do, just to find out what they're up against, might be something you want to try doing when you're building it, is put this on first before putting on the pin carriages, or the antenna carriages. But I'm just proving that if you really want to, you can build it in any order you want. There we go. That's in place, and if I were to pull, like a thing of beauty. Now, this end we're going to connect onto the unit down here, and that's going to go in the very end. You'll notice the pin that we're using is an axle style pin, and so at the bottom, you can just see it in the frame there, it's that angled piece. The end hole is an axle hole, and this axle pin will feed beautifully into it, although it's in a tricky spot. You may even want to pull the pin off of the arm. There we go. It's that ball pin, and you can come at it from underneath the machine. So from underneath, we'll feed that in, and we'll drop this down, and we'll lock it onto our cam. Come on, lock. There we go. And with that in place, technically, if I run the machine, that should get this working. So, grab the battery box again. And let's fire it up. That's working. All right, so let's disconnect the battery. You'll find from the left mast now, you can pick up the machine. It's solid, and you can give it a rotation. And what we're going to do now is, now that we have this on, it's going to be easier to get this done, and it's also going to be a little bit tricky, but not as bad. Let's do the back set of pins, or antenna parts, and let's put this antenna back in place yet again. Okay, so much like the front, we got the spring unit, we've got the pin unit, which I've already put the axles on, but I'll pull them off when I go to mount it. And starting at the top, we'll go 2 pins, just like that. Oh, I'm out of frame on that one, but that's okay because we're going to be doing this about 5 more times. There's the next one. Working our way down. Just like that. Now we're into the difficult ones, or at least they were difficult on the other side. Lining up these pins. Find if you can, try and weasel your finger in behind just to hold it straight while you push it onto that T-beam. There we go. And the bottom one, just like that. There we go. And we've got another one. And again, it's in the middle, so it's going to be a tricky one. Just this in. This is just proof some styles of construction are tougher than others. There we go. There's the top and the bottom. There. Get my finger back. There we go. That's all in place. And one more. And this one should be pretty easy. There we go. So we got those in place down the front. And much like the other side, we're going to get these put on. Now with these ones, it's going to be a little bit different than the other side because now we have the back piece on. So we'll slide that in. Make sure that the axles are flush. When we put the top on, we got to make sure that the wheel is behind this. So we'll lock the wheel in behind. Actually, let's get the axles in place first. There we go. Pull that forward and in. So the wheel is behind. The other thing, remember, we want to watch for is that it runs smoothly, that it springs back and forth quickly. So let's move on to the next one and we'll keep working our way down in high speed. So if you notice here, I got one more that's reluctantly returning. Let's see if we can get a little more light in there. So if you watch, all of them on one side come back properly, except this bottom one. See how it's just slightly delayed? That'll give us trouble. So much like we did on the front side, we'll pull it back off, and we'll see if we can find out what's causing this problem. Let's see if it's like on the front where it was the gray connector versus the black one. The black one just fit a little tighter up into the setup here. Let's see. And this pin seems to help get this put in. Seems to move smoothly. Let's get this on now and see how it works with everything in place. Interesting. Looks good. Okay, let's get this last one going. Being to think maybe these gray ones are just ever so slightly a different size, which would be kind of interesting for Lego, as they're usually really consistent. Or there's something about those parts I don't know. Again, bottom one is sticking. So let's do what we've done at all the other ones, and we'll swap that out. Slide that in. Okay, well, 3 for 3, that kind of tells me the gray ones are not the ones you want to be using. I used them because I didn't have any black ones. So I'm going to grab this pin, pop that off of the link, and same place as the one on the other side. So let's see if we can get this in here enough. It's going to be the absolute last hole, which is a axle style hole, which I'm going to get at from the underside. Just be careful not to tip the whole machine over. There we go. And then I'll feed the link down and in and press that into place. There we go. So let's get the battery pack on there. See if this end runs. Nice. You can see from how we lined up our timing, we're getting to the top right when that gets there. So we are looking good. We don't have much left to put on. So if we look at it, we've got the connectors to the back, or not the connectors, but the antenna holders. There's spring assemblies, the actuator arms, and then just the ball handling system, which is going to be quick and easy. All right, let's get the last of these pin assemblies on. So we're going to rotate back to the front of the machine. And this time we're most interested in this section right here. Now, the front is going to be fairly straightforward because the parts that go on are actually all the same. And they connect with the blue pin and the red axle. So they're going to connect through the axle hole and the pin hole right there. And we'll just press these ones into place. And there's only 3 of them, because each of them actually activates 2 pins, or two antennas, which you probably have seen already building the components. This lever goes underneath here because that's going to be lifting and lowering as it moves. And before we put the front 3 on, let's see if we've learned something from the other side of the machine. So there's our front 3, there's our back 3. Let's get our actuator arms in place. So we have 2 actuator arms. One has this pretty substantial connector system, and one has this very basic connector system. And they actually are going to stack in behind each other. It's just how it's designed. So we're going to start with the substantial one because it does have the middle piece on it. And we're going to line this all up. Two possible places. Second pin from the top or a third pin from the top. Let me just double check my records and let's get this right. Okay. I was confused as to if it was going to be from 1 pin down or at the top for where it mounts on this pin. The way I sorted it out is I connected the cam system, and based on where it sits when it's down versus up, this actually mounts where you go to your lowest pin on the bottom, and the top blue pin is actually 3rd down on the center arm. So That's in place like that. I'll actually disconnect that cam just so that you can see it being connected, and that will help for your construction. And then we're going to get the other one in place here. And again, on mine it's the red will be at the center with the connector facing the cam assembly. So just like the other side, get this lined up, start pushing the pins into place. There we go. There, that would have been the better angle to show you from. So on the inside we have that connects the inside one. On the outside, this connects the outside one, but they stack over top of each other, one over the other. And if we run the machine right now, just to see how those will function, you may find you have to put a little pressure on here just because there are no springs actually activating in the system, so it's not giving any kind of force back. So all right, let's get the front pin assemblies into place here. So pop the battery box. This actually gets a little bit trickier than the front side. This you pull off 1, 2, set them aside, and these axles, the gray 9 on top, the black 10 on the bottom, and they slide into place. And with these ones, they start at the first holes at the top, like that, and the spring arm comes in after. In fact, we're probably going to learn that the spring arm is best added after the fact. In fact, let's just pull it off. Pull the spring arm off, come in here with our cross block, thread that one in, our smaller piece, single cross block, feed that one on, press everything into place, make sure it's nice and smooth, and then we'll put our spring assembly back into place. Make sure we're lined up with that pinhole. There we go. Nice and smooth. Perfect. And we'll keep working our way down. So we'll actually pull this off because it comes off nice and easy. We will pop off the 2 cross blocks, the 2 and the 3. So that we got it just like that with the pins. And then we'll feed it through at the correct spot. You'll find as you're doing this, there is only one spot it fits. So if you can see where I'm getting it, great. If not, you can't get it wrong. So you'll be okay. Just figure out where it goes and get your fingers in there and get this all snapped together, which can be tricky. The more we build, the tighter this all gets. We're running out of space to work, but you get it done. And it's rewarding. It's yet another awesome build. There we go. And we'll put the spring assembly back into place. Again, working nicely. And the last one. 1, 2. So we got those popped off. Slide this into place. 1 and 2. And we'll put these parts back on. Yeah, this will have to come off. And I think every time I've got to drop at least one piece to make it to show how challenging it is. There we go. Line that up. This guy pops in. And then we drop our pins into place. There we go. And let's put our spring unit back in. Oh, thing of beauty. And again, let's get that battery pack on there. Give it a try, make sure everything's moving. There we go. You can already see how that's lining up. All right, let's put the back on, and we are almost done. We can see the end of this project. Well, then I get to start editing video. But this is getting to that point. So we won't put the spring assemblies on. It seems I learn something every time I build a section of this. Let's get this in place. Pull these off. And feed it through. Put in our cross block, like so, and our smaller one. So it's exactly the same as the other side. It's a mirror image so far. You'll see when we get the spring assemblies in, though, they are different because there's a little bit extra mechanisms in the backside here. So make sure that we are inside that arm, like that. For how that sits, and then we'll move on to the next one, pulling off our pieces, putting our pins back in place if they came off, and let's feed these through. So 1 and 2, and they go through. Goes in here. Oh my goodness. So I've got all of these on upside down. It doesn't overly affect how it drives here, but how the wheels run on here, it is affected. These wheels should be at the top. Now, you have a choice. I can pull all of these off, swap them over to the other side. Yeah. I was gonna say, or I could just flip this, but no, because it's also the length of the axles in here and how they ride. Okay, time lapse undo. Let's try flipping it. I think it would be a way of learning. And looks like I need to get this done sooner rather than later. Mrs. Rebricker wants to serve dinner. And I'm looking forward to it. So we'll go back to the other side. We'll just flip these wheels over. Let me get that in frame so you can see what I'm flipping. All I'm doing is popping the wheel off, and flipping the assembly upside down so that the wheel is actually on the top side, just so it lines up better. And you'll probably find it's not going to make a difference for many parts of this, but we want it to be uniform. It looks better when it's all nice, even, and uniform. So I apologize, that one was my mistake. Should not affect the functioning of the machine, but that was definitely the quicker way to fix it. Which means on this one, we will pop the wheel off, flip it over preemptively, and then we'll take our two parts off that we have to pull off so we can mount this section to the machine. Right? So then we can feed our axles. we go. Get those in place. And we'll get our cross blocks on. 1 and 2. And let's press those into place. And let's grab that battery box and see if this runs. This should run totally fine. Yes, fine. Will run better once we add our spring units. Okay, when we built these, remember on the back side there was 3 different ones. There was these 2 that actually are connected together, and then there's this one which looks like a mirror image of the front side ones. So we'll put the mirror image one on first, and that one just mounts like it does on the front, pin through the pinhole, axle through the axle hole in place. And then these guys, because of that attachment in here, this part is what drives the indexer for the balls. So this has to be there. Because of the pins that it uses, I just built it all in place when we were building that component, and so we'll just put it on. Pin through the pinhole, axle through the axle hole, and likewise down below, moving the indexer out of the way. Pin through the pinhole, axles through the axle hole. Make sure everything's in place. Now let's run it and see what happens. This guy seems to stick a little bit if you look at the fluidness of it. And the reason why that happens, let's just advance this a wee bit, is the box that lifts the balls initially has little ridges on it, and the pin seems to just hit it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that box out of there, give it a quarter turn, and then push it back into place, supporting the bottom so I don't break anything. And now let's see if it runs a little more smoothly. There we go. Always got to watch for what's getting hit. Make sure all of your pins are locked into place. Everything's good. This stuff should line up. Now, I'm going to throw a ball in here. And let's see what happens. I don't expect this to work. This is... we didn't set up any timing. We did a little bit, but no fine tuning at all. Okay. I was not expecting that. That was quite fortuitous. I noticed there was a couple of spots where it looked like it might have been able to drop a ball. Let's try it again. I'm actually pretty stoked that that worked. If that happens to you, I want to hear about it, because that's brilliant. That just shows that we've got ourselves a solid build here. It doesn't need too much fine tuning. So we're down to the last few parts. We've got the ball exit ramp assembly with the actual exit guide rails, and we have the ball chute. So let's do this. Let's give this a spin and disconnect the battery box again so it's easier to spin without dragging it around. Our chute is pretty straightforward. Bottom pinhole here to the top pinhole here, and this comes off because it mounts on either side of the chute. So we'll put this on the top pinhole like that. This guy we'll put on the bottom pinhole like that. We'll lift this into place. I see I'm out of focus a bit, but let's see if I can adjust that. There we go. So that little stud that was sitting there presses into place, and we'll put the bottom on and press that into place. It shouldn't interfere with the indexer, so that should be fine. And in this case now, if we were to drop some balls into the hopper and plug in the machine and run it. Working beautifully. Okay. Almost done here. And that's why we disconnect the battery pack, because of that sort of issue. We've got our exit piece. Now you remember our connector in here that connected the tower top to bottom? That one, there was one that was only 2 pins. The reason why there was only 2 pins was because we have 2 pins here. And those 2 pins, we just slide right in there. Let's see if I can get this more in frame. We just slide it right in, and they'll press right in, and those pins are going to go all the way in, all the way through, and they're going to hold this tower together. And that's just going to lock right into place. It won't interfere with that, this rear side going up and down. That won't cause a problem. That's in place. Super easy. And the last bit, we've got at the bottom of this ball exit ramp. This isn't the complete ramp that Akiyuki built, as you can see. I ran short of the turntables. The show I was at, someone from the Vancouver Lego Club was generous enough to let me borrow a turntable. I've got to finish that still. But if you notice, come on, focus, buddy. Focus. We're going to pull this off, and we're actually going to mount it at the bottom here. And I've got right now 3 empty holes, and then that. And for the rest of this, you'll see we have a gap there. Just going to pull this off. And the pins that go with it. Like so. And I'm going to press them through here. Top and bottom, so they come right through. And that is right at the split of that tile right there. So 1 and 2. And then we'll take this with those pins that line back up. Lift that out of the way. And we'll just press this into place. So drop this onto the pin so it can pivot. And then we'll press that, and that into place. That's solid. And then we'll just connect our tubes at the top. Which sometimes can be a little finicky, but overall, these guys will connect nicely. Yeah. There we go. There we go. So, we have ourselves one completed Akiyuki invisible lift. So, what I'm going to do is handheld just for this last bit so we can follow along. Throw some balls in. We'll bring our cup over to the other side. And let's switch on our machine. I haven't done anything since the build. Okay, so we have a small issue to resolve here. A lot of times it's just how a piece is sitting, so all I did was give it a gentle nudge in the right direction. We'll go back into place here. See if we can get 100%. Also, this corner fell off, which there's not a lot holding it on. It just keeps the balls lined up. Let's give this a try. it's been fun building the invisible lift. I can't wait to pick the next project and see what we can build. It looks like at this point it's going to be the lift triggered by a stuck ball, but get your votes in through my Google Plus channel. Subscribe to be informed of any of the future and forthcoming videos, and look forward to seeing you all again soon.